Here's the thing. In Dragonlance Chronicles, they had a bumbling old wizard by the name of Fizban, Fizban. And he'd show up from time to time, and he'd accidentally cast a fireball spell, and he was kind of like the comic relief in some capacity, all right? But what ended up happening is he'd show up, he'd be friendly and ridiculous, and accidentally save the day, kind of the bumbling save the day type of guy. And then he'd disappear, and you wouldn't hear from him for forever. And then he'd reappear again, sort of bumbling down the road at a particular moment. And yeah, you guessed it if you've been paying attention, he was actually the divine avatar of Paladine, which is the platinum dragon, which is the basically the god of all good dragons, the gold dragon, the bronze dragon, the silver dragon, like that, right? So kind of like Homer Simpson, right? Exactly. But so Fizban was the bumbling wizard who always showed up to save the day. And later they did find out that he was the divine avatar of the dragon god of the entire realm, or beyond, astrally and everything. But anyway, there's your spoiler alert. So we're going to come back to this. So basically the idea of the divine avatar is what we're talking about, and all things Dungeons and Dragons. What do you love about D&D, and why has this still persisted 50 years and it's more popular than ever? I don't know. I kind of still love it, and I don't play it as much as I should these days because I'm obviously doing this. But I kind of like to think of this show as our own personal D&D sessions as we do our own new version of tabletop role playing. In any case, there's a lot to this, and like I said, the beautiful part about Dungeons and Dragons is that it incorporates everything. And as they began, they started with sort of the basic vanilla stuff, the European mythologies and, King Arthur and the rest of that stuff. And by the way, I've got the old school monster manual up here for some little flavor and ambiance. And an interesting notable thing about the original D&D, let's say the first monster manual, and when they started back in the 70s and 80s, of course, they were basing all this stuff on real mythology and folklore, okay? Which means demons and devils and angels and that whole bit, okay? And they had all of these entities in the initial actual monster manual and in the game itself, and rules and sub-rules and all this stuff for where these demons came from, and even demon lords themselves from the Keys of Solomon. I mean, wild stuff, okay? Which, of course, as you know, caused that satanic panic, because the question became, well, is this a game or is this sorcery? Are we teaching children sorcery? Okay, which seems absurd in its face. But what if we are? Okay, all right. So bear with me on that, because I've got this article, and you guys probably saw this, and it fit into this conversation perfectly. And shout out Clyde Lewis. He did this last night. He didn't find the article before me. I saw this, but he did do the show on this, but not with a Dungeons and Dragons spin, because we're cool. But from the New York Post, this was from September 7th. Animal sacrifices on the rise in Queens, with chickens, pigs being tortured in twisted rituals. Okay. And so if that fits into, let's say, wizardry or ritual magic, well, maybe the idea of the satanic panic will never die because of things like this. But I saw this article and was like, what? Okay. And there's other stuff. I mean, if you were watching the debate, not going to talk about it, but there's other animal stuff happening that's not the best stuff for animals. Okay. But anyway, what is this and what is going on? And are we still 50 years later after the creation of Dungeons and Dragons? Not like it's some pinnacle human moment or anything. But I mean, for storytelling and creativity, I think it surely is, in my opinion. But I mean, for ritual magic, do you think it is? And so that sort of opens up a whole nother can of worms in terms of how this all fits together or doesn't. But I thought this was a wild story. Let me just read a little bit to you so you don't get just the headline. I'll just read like 3 paragraphs. Again, from the New York Post. This will be linked in the description. As you know, I like to bring the receipts and let you guys know that I'm not just blatantly, ridiculously making things up. And when I am, I will tell you, because I'm heavily speculating. But in this case, apparently this is real. Again, put it on the New York Post if it's not. Animal sacrifices are surging in Queens, with chickens, pigs, and rats being tortured, mutilated, or killed in twisted religious rituals in Parkland surrounding Jamaica Bay, the Post has learned. In a little over a month, at least 9 wounded animals or carcasses have been discovered in the federally managed Spring Creek Park in Howard Beach and the Jamaica Bay Wildlife Refuge in Broad Channel, including 5 live pigs with partially severed ears. What? What? Creatures recovered from the revolting scene also include a near-dead baby rat tied up in a bag with chicken bones, a freshly decapitated chicken head, a live hen in distress, and a dead dog with its neck snapped. Okay, you triggered me at dogs. Not that we should be ritually sacrificing anything, mind you, but dogs, I rather like dogs. Okay, but this is wild, right? And so it, of course, evokes a lot of things in not just the conversation, but in me personally. Damn it, it just fell off again. All right, we'll just have to hold it. But yeah, yeah, Spring Creek, what's up, Derek? Yeah, so okay, and so this is the wild part about it, is that the whole idea of games or tabletop role playing or role playing at all, basically, is sort of an identity pressure relief valve. Okay, meaning that if you get together and you talk vampires, play Vampire the Masquerade. If you guys ever played other role playing games, tabletop role playing games other than Dungeons and Dragons, then there's something to this. There's going to be something to this in terms of sort of assuming an alter ego, an identity other than yourself, and sort of immersing yourself in a particular space. And so that disassociation of self, of us, the identity of the human aspect, I think is probably, in my mind, the part that freaks people out the most and calls this sorcery, or calls it, back to the satanic panic and all the rest of this stuff. I mean, and it didn't help, like I said, that in the first monster manual, they had demons and devils and named the 9 princes of hell and stuff like that, right? So that certainly didn't help, which, by the way, if you're not familiar with the lore of D&D and how it all changed, they changed that in 2nd edition, and they didn't actually have demons and devils anymore. So they removed that clearly because of the Tipper Gores of the world. They were freaking out, and we're teaching our kids sorcery. I mean, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But I think that's the thing, right? It's always, as always, we talk about this stuff on Troubled Minds as control mechanisms, direct control mechanisms of identity, not just our identity, but the identity that we're granted by the power structures that be, the de facto power structures, as I always say. And I think that's the most important part of this to me, is that we do need a little bit of, sort of that fantastic, some whimsy in our lives. Otherwise, what are we doing? Like I always say, and this is why I'm here doing this at night, talking about wild stuff that nobody really talks about. There's some folks out there doing good work that talk about similar type stuff, but nobody does it quite like us, because a little whimsy is okay. We need this as part of, let's say, our, not just, let's say, spiritual growth. I think however you want to define that and however you want to apply any of these concepts to it, go for it. Be better for it. But I think sort of detaching from reality and looking at the world in that, Marvel's what if capacity is really what this is all about. And to me, it's freeing. Like I don't feel bottled up anymore. I don't feel like I have all these ideas just with a hammer from the inside of my head trying to get out, because we're here doing these together, having these conversations together about these wild ideas. But back to the divine avatar. So that's the question tonight. Now, and this is the weird part about the original Dungeons and Dragons rules. If you guys aren't familiar, like I said, and sorry that I'm not as on the ball with clicking buttons and watching the chat, because yeah, things are. I'm holding the mic, but with the whole Dungeons and Dragons bit of this is that it seems as if this idea of Zeus coming down as this divine avatar, or what Odin, the Allfather, used to come down as a blind man, like a blind beggar. Like this has been one of those things that really resonates with ancient humans for a very long time, even to the point where it's sort of like caution. Be careful how you treat the old blind beggar on the road, because you never know if it's going to be Odin the Allfather or a vindictive Zeus that's wants to be treated well and is kind of testing you. Okay, so there's a lot to that capacity, and so the question is for the modern bit, okay, whether it's religious, whether it's otherwise, do you think this is possible? Is it happening? And back to what I was saying before I derailed, the rules of the divine avatar in Dungeons and Dragons are that you can not destroy a divine being here on the prime material plane. Okay, again, Dungeons and Dragons rules, so everybody relax. I don't really know about the real rules of the cosmos, because of course, as I always say, that's above my my pay grade. But if they appear here, so for instance, let's say you've got a badass adventuring party in Dungeons and Dragons, in Minecraft, whatever, right? And Odin the Allfather shows up as the blind beggar, and you're a bunch of really sadistic punks in the game, role-playing sadistic punks, not actually sadistic punks, right? But then you maybe rob the beggar. Let's see what he's got. Maybe he shook down somebody rich 20 minutes earlier. So maybe you rob the beggar, okay, as part of a role-playing aspect of a thief might do, or a chaotic evil thief or something, right? So you do that, but there is, of course, always the divine instant retribution of something like that, because clearly you don't want to do that to a divine entity, to treat them poorly. But here's the best part, is that if you, in the D&D rules, again, the real Cosmos, I can't tell you, but in the D&D rules, if, let's say you had a badass adventuring party and you attacked the divine avatar and even dispatched it, it didn't matter, because they cannot die in the prime material plane. You can only kill them in their plane of existence of their origin. Very much like, of course, Stranger Things, Vecna, D&D, that whole bit. They had to go into the Upside Down to fight him because he couldn't. They couldn't kill him in our realm because he was actually trying to break through. So there's sort of this. Anyway, it's a wild thing. I love it. I love the ideas, and I'm sure this goes back into some really, really deep esoteric magic that I don't know anything about. But it seems like Gary Gygax and those amazing guys 50 years ago, when they created Dungeons and Dragons, they knew a little something about something. And dare we say, maybe, just maybe, they were wizards themselves. And oddly enough, they had a little company that turned into TSR. And eventually Wizards of the Coast purchased it, and now that's who owns Dungeons and Dragons. Shout out Wizards of the Coast. But so I do wonder if Gary Gygax and his band of merry men that first started playing Dungeons and Dragons in a basement, which, a funny aside on that, is that his wife followed him one day, Gary Gygax, the inventor of Dungeons and Dragons. She followed him one day because she was positive that he was cheating on her, because he was always sneaking off and doing some stuff. She follows him to this dark basement where him and his old middle-aged friends are looking at hand-drawn maps. And there's some Dungeons and Dragons lore for you. Say, men only want one thing, and it's disgusting. And it's hand-drawn maps in a dark basement. That's that. That's what's on my mind tonight. Dungeons and Dragons, this whole, the Divine Avatar, 50 years of D&D. What do you know about it? And if you don't know anything about it, let's talk about it. Tonight we're talking, I'm calling this the Divine Avatar, 50 years of Dungeons and Dragons, and why not, right? It's debate night here in America if you're international, and it's just so depressing. It's just so depressing. So let's talk about something fun. Let's celebrate 50 years of something amazing that starts the imagination happening. And like I said, without D&D that I discovered when I was very young, like probably 10 years old, somewhere in that range, there would be no troubled minds today, because it is one of those beautiful things, Dungeons and Dragons, that brings the paranormal into frame. It brings ancient wisdom into frame. It brings deities and demigods. It brings monsters. It brings just this entire really amazing aspect of storytelling into the human mindset. And like I said when we began, I think we need it. I think we definitely need a capacity of this. And as always, look, all the disclaimers apply. I could be wrong about everything, so don't ever assume I'm some actual truth teller. I'm just a guy that likes wild stories and asking wild questions. That's it. So there's no truth to be found here. All the disclaimers apply. But could you more seamlessly, let's say, put the multiverse into a single space other than Dungeons and Dragons? I mean, Marvel's trying to do it, but I think D&D had them beat by probably quite a long shot, but I may be wrong. Anyway, love to hear your thoughts on this. 702-957-1037. Just having a little fun tonight so we can actually be part of this together, hanging out, talking about anything other than politics, and just getting our mind off of the woes of the world. I think James was first. Go ahead, James. What's up, my man? Salcedo Paranormal, you're on Troubled Minds. How are you, sir? And go right ahead.
I'm okay. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep, you sound just fine, sir. Go right ahead.
Good. The amazing thing about these kind of games, Dungeons and Dragons, and just any kind of games that feature any kind of mythological or historical figures, is that so many people over time have reported seeing so many different creatures and beings in actual sightings in this world. This made me think of, and it's not a lot, but a few stories I've heard of experiences over the years where people would be let's say on a driving down a road, and even like out in the middle of nowhere in some cases, and come across someone that did not that they were walking or just standing on the side of the road, and the weather, whether it was extreme heat or whatever, they did not seem to be dressed for that kind of weather. And so these people would just give them a ride. And this person would have this otherworldly aura to them. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes hard to tell. And they would know things about the people that were giving them a ride, or one of the people or more. And sometimes they would just sort of show that in their conversation and what they were saying. Other times they would try to help the people, sort of say, this is going to be okay. You should do this. You shouldn't do that. All these kinds of things that no one should know about except for the people that are going through their lives. And so this is something that I have heard of in different paranormal shows and read about in different forums and things. That does happen from time to time, which is really an amazing thing. And it made me think of exactly what you were talking about with the game, where the Dungeons and Dragons game, because I never actually got to play it, but where deities would show up and players would have encounters with them, and things could go any number of ways. So that's an amazing parallel there, I think.
Yeah, and so a couple things happening with that. I think it fits into sort of that paranormal tale of the hitchhiker. We've talked about that. We did a whole show on that, where it is sort of built into folklore, because you don't really know who that person is. It's sort of that the uncanny valley, the sort of the specter of who it might be, that whole bit, right? Is it somebody friendly? Is it the serial killer? Or is it Odin the Allfather judging you as you drive by and not pick up the hitchhiker type of stuff, right? Like there's definitely some paranormal supernatural spice in that tale, but it does fit, as you're describing, into as you describe, these different entities that may or may not be what they appear to be. And that becomes a larger question in the context of, I mean, again, not to be blasphemous, but there have been major religions of the world that suggest that an avatar of the God himself, whatever that looks like, has come down to earth as prophets or seers or this type of thing, this et cetera, so on. I'm not going to say the exact words because you know exactly what I'm thinking, but there's a lot of different aspects of this that seem ubiquitous culturally everywhere, again going back to ancient times to modern times. And so this idea in particular, it seems ridiculous to say it, but I think there's something to this that resonates with us, and it's worthy of definitely some thinking. But anyway, yeah, great stuff. What else you got? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just based on some of the experiences I've heard alone about that, it seems like it's possible. Um, I also think it's amazing how so many of these creatures, depending on like the various monsters, so to speak, in games, there are sightings of them throughout time as well. So that was really my main thing I wanted to bring up. I don't have a lot right now, but I will just stick around, and if it's okay, and maybe we'll talk later on if there's time, and I'll let you know if I have anything else.
Right on. Great stuff as always. James Salcedo, you know him, you love him, the glue of the show, a dear friend, and of course the paranormal expert of Troubled Minds. Go check out his show. Go check out his new book. His new book's called Salcedo Paranormal Experiences. Check that out. Links in the description. troubledminds.org/friends. It says follow James here. Go follow his podcast, his YouTube, his Twitter X, all that stuff while you're there. And by the way, his book is only $5 Kindle, $10 paperback. You can buy it on Amazon, get it, order it today, probably get it tomorrow. So yeah, let's support our friends, and great stuff. Keep up the great work, James. Appreciate you, and we'll talk to you momentarily. And you're the best, as you know.
Thank you.
No, thank you. So we're talking the Divine Avatar tonight. I'm calling it, of course, 50 years of Dungeons and Dragons to change the subject on the politics that's happening right now on this screen over to my right that I watched part of and just wanted to punch myself in the face. So instead, let's talk about something fun, which D&D turning 50 years old is incredible. And I love the idea. I love all the ideas that come along with it and how this fits into the larger context of not just the materialist versus the religious fundamentalist, that whole bit, right? The secular materialist versus religious fundamentalist, like I'm always talking about. I think there's a larger aspect to reality that's a little bit more flexible than we kind of give it credit for. But for our survival and our sanity, I think we have to sort of lock into a silo of one of these ideas, which, as you know me, I try and be as agnostic as possible in all ways, and not fall for anything. And because of you know me and my control mechanisms, I hate them. And I'd rather think for myself and rather be wrong than be told some other. I'd rather be wrong myself than have some other wrong person tell me to be wrong. You get what I'm saying?